Welcome to the Chill Stoic. This is your quiet space to slow down, to breathe, to remember who you are beneath the noise. You're not here for noise, for pressure, or for perfection. You're here to come home, to your calm, to your truth, to that still voice inside you that already knows what matters. Whether you're walking, resting, or simply trying to catch your breath today, I'm grateful you pressed play. You belong here, so let's begin. Part 1. The illusion of control. Today's journey isn't about doing more. It's not even about becoming more. It's about surrender. A word that might sound like giving up, like weakness, like quitting. But what if I told you, surrender is where your true strength has been hiding all along? What if letting go was never about loss, but about allowing something greater to move through your life without resistance? So before we go any further, I want you to take a breath, slow, full, grounded, and ask yourself honestly, what am I still trying to force? What am I gripping so tightly that it's blocking me from peace? Because that's where we begin. There's something strange about life. The tighter you try to control it, the more it slips through your hands. You make the plans, you visualize the outcome, you do everything right, and yet, somehow, it doesn't unfold the way you pictured. And in that moment, you start to wonder, did I fail? Or did life betray me? But what if neither is true? What if control, the kind we've been conditioned to worship, is an illusion? We think if we plan well enough, hustle hard enough, manage every variable, we can guarantee the outcome. But life doesn't follow scripts. It dances, it adapts, it moves in ways the rational mind can't predict, and sometimes, what feels like chaos is actually grace in disguise. We grow up thinking surrender is the opposite of success, that it's passive, weak, the domain of those who don't try hard enough. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Surrender isn't about apathy, it's about alignment. It's about learning how to stop fighting reality and start partnering with it. It's choosing to believe that even when things don't go according to your plan, they might be going according to a deeper one. And the only way to see that plan unfold is to stop standing in the way. This first shift, the surrender of control, is often the hardest. Because we've built our identities around being the one who gets things done. The fixer, the achiever, the planner, the doer, and surrender threatens that. It invites us to trade ego for trust, to admit we don't know, to loosen our grip, not because we're weak, but because we're finally wise enough to see that control is often a cage disguised as a strategy. So we hold, we fight, we tighten, and we suffer. But the moment we let go, truly let go, something happens. The fear softens, the resistance breaks, and in that space, life begins to flow again. You don't have to surrender everything at once. Start small. Start with the thing that's weighing you down the most. The conversation you keep rehearsing in your head. The outcome you're obsessing over. The door that's been closed for far too long. Ask yourself, what if I didn't try to force this anymore? What if I just allowed what is, and trusted that it's enough for now? That question alone can begin to unravel years of tightness. And in its place, peace begins to rise, quietly, steadily, like breath returning to lungs that forgot how to expand. This is not a practice of giving up. It's a practice of coming back, to trust, to stillness, to the wisdom beneath your effort. You still show up, you still do your part, but you no longer carry the weight of forcing things into being. You learn to dance with life instead of fighting it, and in that dance, you rediscover the freedom you've been chasing all along. Part 2. Resistance, the enemy of flow. If surrender is the doorway to peace, then resistance is the wall we keep crashing into. It's quiet, subtle, often invisible, and yet, it holds incredible power over our lives. Resistance is that inner tightening. That voice that says, this shouldn't be happening. It shows up as control. But underneath it is fear. It shows up as logic. But underneath it is pain. It says, this isn't what I wanted. Or, this isn't how it was supposed to go. And just like that, we disconnect, not from others, not even from the moment, but from ourselves. Because when you resist life, You're not fighting circumstances, you're fighting your own nervous system. And that inner war? It exhausts you. It isolates you. And worst of all, it blocks the flow that was trying to move through you all along. You see, resistance doesn't always look like rebellion. Sometimes it looks like perfectionism. Sometimes it looks like procrastination. Sometimes it looks like staying busy so you never have to sit still. It looks like overthinking, overplanning, overcompensating, but at the core, it's all the same. It's an attempt to protect yourself from uncertainty by refusing to feel it. The irony is, the very thing you're resisting is often what you need to walk through to be free. Pain, grief, letting go, forgiveness, change, growth. These things feel threatening to the ego. So resistance steps in like a shield. But over time, that shield becomes a prison. It locks you out of your own life. The Stoics understood this. They didn't try to erase hardship, they embraced it. They knew that freedom wasn't about removing all obstacles. It was about removing the inner conflict about the obstacles. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." But how do we live that? How do we stop resisting when our whole nervous system is screaming, "No, this isn't fair"? You start by acknowledging that resistance is a reflex, not a failure. It's the brain's way of trying to keep you safe. And safety isn't the problem. Attachment to comfort is. So when resistance rises, instead of judging it, you can get curious. You can ask, what am I afraid of here? And more importantly, what might happen if I surrendered instead of fought this? This doesn't mean becoming passive. Surrender is not collapse. It's not defeat. It's choosing to stop feeding energy into the fight, so you can redirect it toward flow. Think about a time you were in full alignment, where things moved easily, where you felt present, connected, alive. I guarantee resistance wasn't in the room. Because resistance disconnects us from the moment. It splits us between what is and what should be. And in that gap, we suffer. But the moment you soften, even slightly, you feel it. A loosening, a breath, a sense of, maybe I don't need to force this. That's the beginning of flow. Flow is not about ease. It's about allowing. It's not always graceful. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it means crying on your bathroom floor or walking away from something that used to define you. But it always starts with the same choice, the willingness to let go of how you thought it should be, and lean into how it is. Because life doesn't flow when you're pretending. It flows when you're honest, when you're soft, when you're open. So if you're tired, not just physically, but soul tired, ask yourself, what have I been resisting? What truth am I avoiding? What pain am I trying to outthink, outrun, outwork? And if you can bring even a little compassion to that answer, you'll find something beautiful. Underneath resistance is longing. A longing to heal. A longing to feel safe. A longing to belong. And when you stop resisting, you stop rejecting yourself. That's when flow returns. That's when life starts moving again, not because you pushed harder, but because you finally stopped pushing against it. Part 3. The power of surrendered action. Let's clear up one of the biggest misconceptions right now. Surrender is not the opposite of action. It's not laziness. It's not passivity. It's not spiritual bypassing disguised as whatever happens, happens. Surrendered action is still action, but it's born from clarity, not control. It comes from alignment, not anxiety. You're still moving. You're still showing up. You're still committed, but you're no longer forcing the outcome. You're no longer gripping the steering wheel so tightly that your knuckles go white. You're not taking action from fear, you're taking it from trust. That's the difference. That's the power. Most of us were taught a very narrow definition of power. We were taught that power means domination, hustling harder, grinding longer, being the loudest voice in the room. But Stoicism and surrender teach us something different. They remind us that true power is inner stillness in the middle of outer motion. That the most grounded people are often the ones taking the most meaningful action, not because they're the busiest, but because they're the most intentional. They're not flailing, they're flowing, and that kind of movement, it changes things, because it's not chaotic, It's calibrated. Surrendered action asks you to listen first, not to your fears, not to external noise, but to your inner knowing. That part of you that already knows the next right move, if you just stop long enough to hear it. But most people are too busy chasing, too busy fixing, too busy proving, so they miss the quiet invitation life keeps offering. You don't have to make it happen. You just have to become the person it's meant to happen through. That shift, from forcing life to flowing with life, is where surrendered action begins. Think of a river. It doesn't rush to be a river. It just flows. It doesn't apologize for its direction. It just follows gravity. It doesn't ask the mountain for permission. It moves with what is, persistent, but peaceful. That's the energy of surrendered action. You still make decisions. You still set intentions. You still show up fully. But you release the obsession with controlling every twist and turn. You trust that your alignment is more powerful than your anxiety. You trust that when you move from inner stillness, your action carries deeper impact, not because you tried harder, but because you trusted deeper. Surrendered action also means being willing to release attachment to timing. Sometimes you plant the seed, and the harvest takes months or years. But that doesn't mean the seed isn't growing. The Stoics remind us, you are not entitled to results, only to your effort. And when you do what's yours to do, and let go of what isn't, you create space for something greater to unfold. Something that doesn't drain you, but supports you. That's the magic of surrender. It puts you in partnership with life, not in opposition to it. So if you're in a season right now where things aren't moving the way you thought they would, pause, breathe, and ask, am I acting from force or from faith? Am I chasing something because I'm scared of who I'll be without it? Or am I moving from love, from presence, from alignment? That question alone can recenter your entire life. It brings you back to what matters, not doing more, but doing what matters most. With heart, with clarity, with grace. And here's the thing, surrendered action isn't always visible. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is rest, to let go of the urgency, to trust that stepping back is also movement, to trust that stillness, too, is a kind of momentum. Because when you stop acting out of fear, your entire nervous system exhales. And from there, from that soft, open, surrendered space, the next step often becomes clear. Part 4. Trusting life's intelligence. There's a quiet intelligence moving through life, a kind of invisible rhythm that organizes things beyond what we can see, measure, or predict. It's not always logical. It doesn't always make sense to the mind. But if you've ever had a moment where everything aligned perfectly, not because you planned it, but because you allowed it, then you've touched this intelligence. And yet, even though we've all experienced glimpses of that deeper flow, we forget. We go back to trying to control every detail, to bending reality to fit our timelines, our agendas, our expectations. But life has never needed our control to work. It just needs our trust. And trusting life's intelligence doesn't mean trusting that everything will go how you want. It means trusting that whatever happens, even the discomfort, even the detour, holds something meaningful for your evolution. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate, not just tolerating what happens, but embracing it fully, as if it were chosen. That's not easy, especially when life hurts, especially when it feels unfair. But that's where surrender becomes more than just a concept. It becomes a radical act of faith. It's saying, even though I don't understand why this is happening, I choose to trust that life is not working against me, but through me. That mindset, it shifts everything. Because instead of constantly bracing against what could go wrong, you begin to open to what might go right in ways you never imagined. We forget that life sees a bigger picture. While we're focused on the immediate, life is orchestrating something deeper, a connection, a healing, a redirection that our minds may not yet comprehend. Think about the times you didn't get what you wanted, only to realize months or years later that it was actually a blessing. A relationship that ended before it broke you. A job you didn't land that led you to your calling. A delay that protected you from something you couldn't see at the time. It felt like loss. But in hindsight, it was alignment. Life doesn't make mistakes. It makes adjustments. Trusting this intelligence doesn't mean you never doubt, never cry, never question. It just means you don't let those moments close your heart. It means you say, I don't have to know how this works out to keep walking. You stay in motion. You stay in integrity. You stop outsourcing your peace to external certainty. That's when something powerful happens. You begin to feel carried. Like you're not doing this life alone. Like life itself is holding you, even when things fall apart. But here's the thing. Trust is a practice, not a feeling. You won't always feel safe. You won't always feel clear. But you can still choose to trust, especially in those moments. You trust not because life always gives you what you want, but because you've learned that it often gives you what you need. You trust because control has failed you enough times to know that maybe, just maybe, surrender holds a deeper kind of safety. So ask yourself, where in your life are you still trying to micromanage the mystery? Where are you refusing to trust the unfolding, holding so tightly that you've blocked the magic trying to enter? And what would it feel like, just for today, to loosen your grip? To say, I may not understand this yet, but I choose to believe there's something sacred happening here. That's how you begin to move through life not as a victim of it, but as a participant in its wisdom. Life is intelligent. Life is aware. Life is always guiding, always adjusting, always calling you home to yourself. And when you trust that, not blindly, but bravely, you start to experience something rare. A life that feels less like a battle, and more like a conversation. One where you don't have to know everything to keep showing up with your whole heart. Part 5. The burden of expectations. Expectations, they sound innocent, don't they? Just thoughts, just hopes, just visions of how things could be. But left unchecked, they become chains, invisible weights we place on ourselves, on others, on life itself. We expect people to behave a certain way. We expect timelines to unfold on our schedule. We expect outcomes to reward our efforts exactly as we imagined. And when they don't, when reality doesn't meet the image we created, we suffer. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't happen the way we thought it should. That's the true burden of expectations. They tether our peace to things we can't control. They set us up to lose, over and over again, not because life is cruel, but because we tried to force it to match a script it never agreed to perform. The Stoics were blunt about this. Epictetus said, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them." And so often, those judgments come from expectations we didn't even know we were carrying. A silent contract we wrote in our mind: if I try my best, they'll love me. If I do everything right, this will succeed. If I give, I will receive. And when reality breaks that contract, we feel betrayed. But the truth is, life never signed it. People never promised to play the role we assigned them. The world was never obligated to deliver comfort just because we worked hard. That sounds harsh, until you realize how liberating it is. Because if your peace doesn't depend on everything going your way, then you're finally free to live, to adapt, to breathe, even when the story shifts. So how do we untangle from expectations without becoming indifferent? How do we care, but not cling? It starts with presence. You stop projecting into the future and you meet the moment as it is. You show up fully, but you release the demand that it has to look a certain way. You replace, "this should be happening," with, "this is happening, and I get to choose how I move through it." You stop using expectations as protection, and you start building resilience instead. Because the more attached you are to the picture in your head, the less you'll be able to see the beauty unfolding right in front of you. And yes, this applies to people too. We carry so many unspoken expectations into our relationships. We expect them to read our minds, to show up how we show up, to love us the way we love them. But real connection doesn't grow from expectation. It grows from permission, the permission to be fully human, imperfect, evolving. When you let go of who you think they should be, you create space to actually see who they are. And sometimes, that's more beautiful than anything you could have imagined. The truth is, Surrendering expectations doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means raising your consciousness. It means trusting yourself to handle what comes, rather than needing everything to go according to plan. Because expectations are often just fear wearing a mask, fear of disappointment, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. But if you can breathe through that fear, if you can stand in the open space where the script has dissolved, you'll discover something better than certainty. You'll find presence. And in presence, you'll realize that while you can't control outcomes, you can control how open your heart stays. And that is enough. So today, ask yourself, what am I expecting that's actually draining me? What stories am I projecting onto this person, this situation, this moment? And what would it feel like to lay that burden down? Not forever, just for now, just long enough to see clearly again, just long enough to return to the moment where peace lives, where life breathes, where surrender begins. Part 6. Surrendering in relationships. Surrender sounds beautiful when it's just between you and the universe. But when other people step in, their words, their choices, their flaws, their silence, surrender suddenly feels like risk. Because relationships are where our deepest expectations live, where our attachments grow roots, where our fears get loud, and when the people we love don't act the way we imagined, or when connections drift, or when someone doesn't give us the love we're ready to give, surrender in that space feels impossible. But it's also exactly where it's needed most. Because relationships, more than anything else, mirror back the parts of us still trying to control, to fix, to hold on too tightly, hoping that love, or approval, or closeness will make us feel enough. The truth is, surrendering in relationships doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop trying to force a version of love that fits your idea, but not your reality. We often go into relationships, romantic, familial, even friendships, with silent contracts. Expectations that say, if I show up, you'll meet me the same way. If I give love, you'll give consistency. If I express my needs, you'll fulfill them. And sometimes that happens, but sometimes it doesn't. And in the gap between what we give and what we get, pain grows. That's where resentment, bitterness, and over-functioning live. We start trying to earn what should be freely given. We try to mold ourselves into someone they'll stay for. We betray our own needs to keep the peace. And little by little, we disappear from ourselves. That's not connection. That's self-abandonment. And it's not sustainable. Surrender in relationships means you let people be who they are, and you pay attention to how that feels. It means you stop rewriting their patterns. Stop excusing their inconsistency. Stop rescuing them from consequences they keep choosing. It means you love them. But you love yourself enough not to tolerate emotional crumbs. You hold space, but you also hold boundaries. Because true surrender doesn't mean staying in what hurts. It means walking away from dynamics that require you to shrink. It means choosing peace over chaos. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let someone go. But not all surrender is about ending. Sometimes it's about softening, about realizing that no one is perfect, that the people in our lives are learning, just like we are, that they carry wounds we don't see, speak languages of love we don't always understand. And surrender, in that sense, is about presence, about listening more than you speak, about choosing understanding over judgment, about letting go of the fantasy version of someone so you can love the human in front of you. It's about seeing clearly and deciding, with intention, whether this connection feeds or depletes your spirit. The Stoics taught that we suffer not because of others, but because of our attachments to what we think they should be. But people are not here to fulfill your scripts. They are here to be who they are. And the only question that truly matters is, can I meet them there, as I am, without losing myself in the process? So today, if your heart feels heavy with someone, a partner, a parent, a friend, ask yourself, what am I trying to control here? What story am I writing about them that keeps me stuck in pain? And then, breathe, come back to the present. Ask, can I love without clinging? Can I care without fixing? Can I release what's hurting me, without closing my heart, that is surrender. That is strength. That is what allows relationships to either evolve authentically or fade with grace. Part 7. Returning to the present moment. So much of our suffering doesn't come from what's happening right now, it comes from what we're replaying from the past or fearing about the future. The argument you had yesterday. The mistake from last year. The deadline next week. The uncertainty that keeps whispering worst-case scenarios in your mind. And without even realizing it, you're no longer here, your body's in the room. But your mind is somewhere else entirely, scattered across timelines you can't touch. And slowly, that separation becomes your normal. You feel disconnected, anxious, ungrounded. You scroll more, sleep less, overthink everything, and deep down, your soul starts to ask, where did I go? That's why this part of surrender matters so much, because the real power, the real healing, the real peace is only found here, in the now. The present moment is not always easy. Sometimes it holds discomfort, sometimes it's quiet and awkward, sometimes it's so simple, your mind doesn't know what to do with it. But the present moment is honest. It's not hiding anything, it's not rewriting anything, it's not predicting anything, it just is. And when you return to it, truly return, something in you exhales. Your nervous system settles, your jaw unclenches, your breath deepens, because for the first time in hours, days, maybe even years, you're not fighting time anymore. You're not trying to relive what's already gone or control what hasn't happened. You're just being, and that, in itself, is sacred. The Stoics knew this. They spoke constantly about awareness, about presence, about remembering that the only thing we truly own is now. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not disturb yourself by imagining your whole life ahead. Take it step by step, day by day, moment by moment." And yet, we do the opposite. We live in our heads. We borrow stress from the future. We ruminate over what can't be changed. We try to control what hasn't even arrived. But here's the truth. Nothing happens in the past or future. Everything, your breath, your choices, your healing, happens right here. This breath, this heartbeat, this moment. Returning to the present isn't a one-time decision. It's a practice, a gentle, constant invitation. And it often starts with your senses. What do you see right now? What do you hear, smell, feel under your feet? What's real, not in your mind, but in this space? That's where you begin. You ground yourself in the now by tuning back into your body, into the rhythm of breath, into the space between thoughts, into the silence that's always been there beneath the noise. And from that place, surrender becomes more than an idea. It becomes embodied, lived, felt. Presence is not passive, it's powerful, because when you're present, you're not wasting energy on what you can't change. You're fully available to what can change, your response, your perception, your next step. You become more intentional, more aware, more open. You stop missing your own life. You stop speeding through it like it's a checklist. You start living it as it's unfolding, not as you imagined it should have been. So today, take just one moment, maybe right now, and come back to your breath. Inhale gently, exhale slowly. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel the weight of your body supported by the earth. Nothing to fix, nothing to figure out, just this breath, just this moment. That's the entry point, that's the portal to peace. Because no matter how loud your mind gets, no matter how much life pulls you, the present moment is always waiting for you to return. And every time you do, you remember, peace was never somewhere else. It was here all along. Part 8. Living without attachment to outcome. This might be one of the hardest truths to accept. You can pour your heart into something, show up fully, act with integrity, and still, the outcome might not look like what you hoped. You might give your best, and they still leave. You might speak your truth, and they still don't understand. You might build with everything you've got, and it still might fall apart. And if your sense of worth, peace, or purpose is attached to that outcome, you will suffer deeply. Because the truth is, outcomes are never guaranteed. That's not how life works. And that's exactly why the Stoics and surrender teach us a higher path. detach from the outcome. Stay rooted in the process. It sounds simple, but detachment is not indifference. You still care, you still show up, you still dream, but you're no longer hostage to how it turns out. You stop measuring your worth by results you cannot control. You stop letting external success dictate internal value. You act with full presence, not because you're promised a reward, but because it's who you are. That's what real freedom feels like. Not apathy, not avoidance, but alignment. You're aligned with your effort, not your ego's craving for validation. We've been conditioned to believe that the result is everything, that the ending defines the journey, that if it didn't end well, it wasn't worth it. But that's not life, that's performance. And when you treat your life like a performance, you become addicted to applause. You become paralyzed by fear of failure. You start shaping your choices around approval instead of authenticity. But when you surrender your attachment to outcome, you begin to live, you begin to try things. Not because you're guaranteed success, but because the experience itself is worth it. The growth, the stretch, the presence, that becomes the reward. The Stoics were masters of this mindset. They reminded themselves daily that their responsibility was to their own character, not to fortune, not to applause, not even to whether their efforts succeeded. They knew that control ends where action ends. After that, it's life's domain, and the more we interfere with life's part, the more we drain ourselves with anxiety, disappointment, and shame. So what does this look like in practice? It means you write the book, even if no one reads it. You say what needs to be said, even if it's not received how you hoped. You build the thing, share the truth, walk the path, even if there's no finish line in sight. Because it's not about being seen. It's about being real. It's about becoming someone who lives with courage, with presence, with integrity, even when no one's watching. Especially then. And yes, the ego will resist. It will tell you that effort is wasted unless there's proof. It will demand results. It will panic in the unknown. But that's the invitation. To love the process more than the promise. To love yourself even when the world is silent. To stop waiting for something outside of you to confirm that what you're doing matters. Because the act itself is the confirmation. The peace in your chest. The clarity in your step. The stillness that follows honesty. That's what tells you you're on the right path. So today, ask yourself, what outcome am I clinging to? What result am I chasing so hard that I'm missing the joy of the journey? What would it feel like to let go, not give up, but let go and say, I'll give my best, and trust that whatever comes is enough? That shift doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. Because when you're no longer enslaved by outcome, you become free to act from love, from truth, from depth. That's the kind of strength the world can't take away. Part 9. The stillness within chaos. There's a kind of chaos the world gets used to, the noise. The urgency, the scroll, the updates, the endless need to react. We live in a culture that glorifies stimulation, that equates movement with progress, and confusion with normal. We carry stress like armor. We wear overwhelm like it means we matter. But somewhere beneath all of it, beneath the noise, beneath the tension, beneath the rapid fire pressure to always be on, there is a place in you that is untouched. Still, steady, unmoved, and the deeper you go into surrender, the more clearly you feel it. That stillness is not outside of you. It is within you. It's not waiting for the world to calm down. It's waiting for you to come back home. The Stoics taught this with fierce clarity. They lived in times of war, betrayal, exile, and death, yet they wrote about peace, not because the world gave it to them, but because they cultivated it from the inside out. Marcus Aurelius led an empire under attack, yet wrote nightly meditations on inner calm. Epictetus was a slave, yet taught that no one could touch the freedom of his mind. Their peace wasn't circumstantial. It was sovereign. It was built in silence, tested by fire, and rooted in stillness. That's what surrender gives us. Not the promise that chaos will end, but the strength to remain unshaken in the middle of it. Stillness is not avoidance. It's not denial. It doesn't mean you stop caring about the world. It means you stop letting the world dictate your center. You start making decisions from a grounded place. You speak from clarity, not from chaos. You respond instead of react. And that space between reaction and response? That's where wisdom lives. That's where emotional strength is forged, in the pause, in the breath, in the moment when you feel the storm rise and choose not to become it. It's easy to confuse stillness with passivity. But true stillness is active. It's engaged. It's a form of quiet discipline. It means you've done the inner work to stay rooted, even when the world is shaking around you. It means you're no longer a puppet to every notification, every mood swing, every external crisis. You still care, deeply. But you're not ruled by the current. You've found something stronger than momentum. You've found your anchor. And it's there, always there, when you slow down enough to listen. You find it in your breath, in your body, in the space between your thoughts. It's that moment in meditation when everything goes quiet, not just around you, but inside you. It's that second of stillness before you speak the truth. It's that pause where you remember, I don't have to match the energy of the chaos. I can hold my own. That is surrender, not giving in to fear, but giving up the need to fight every battle. You choose your energy. You protect your peace. You become responsible for your frequency, not the world's noise. So today, if everything feels loud, if everything feels fast, if your mind feels scattered and your heart feels heavy, stop. Just stop. Not forever. Just for now. Breathe. Place your hand on your chest. Listen to what doesn't move. That's the part of you that's always been calm. That's the part that can't be shaken by external storms. That's the part that has survived every moment you thought you couldn't. And it's still here, waiting. Stillness doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for return, again and again. Part 10. The freedom of letting go. At the heart of surrender lies one final act, the letting go. Not the letting go of effort. Not the letting go of care. But the letting go of the illusion that holding tighter will save you. Because sometimes, the strongest thing you'll ever do is release. The image, the outcome, the version of yourself you were trying to become. The relationship you thought would last. The story you kept replaying. The need to be understood. The need to win. The belief that it all had to go a certain way to be worth it. You let go, not because you stopped loving, but because you started listening. To your breath, to your truth, to the quiet knowing that whispers, this no longer serves you. And in that letting go, something softens, something opens, something heals. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care anymore. It means you've grown enough to see that forcing things only creates more suffering. It means you're finally ready to trust the space in between. The space where you don't know what's next. The space where your identity is shifting. The space where clarity hasn't arrived yet, but peace is already waiting. The Stoics knew this kind of surrender well. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And so often, what we're holding onto, the fear, the tension, the illusion of control, is suffering we create ourselves. Not because we're broken, but because we're scared to release what once defined us. But letting go isn't just a release, it's a return. A return to what's real. A return to the self beneath the striving. A return to the freedom that was buried under all the proving. And freedom isn't loud. It's not explosive. It's a quiet lightness. It's waking up without the weight. It's walking through your day with open palms. It's knowing that even if everything falls apart, you won't, because who you are, your peace, your worth, your wholeness, was never built on outcomes to begin with. This is the gift of surrender. Not that it gives you everything you want, but that it frees you from needing everything you want to be okay. It brings you back to a deeper knowing, that you were always enough. That you don't have to chase peace, you are peace. When you stop resisting, that life doesn't need to follow your script to be beautiful. That your story can unfold in ways you never planned, and still be meaningful beyond imagination. Letting go isn't the end. It's the beginning. The moment you stop fighting what is, you begin to rise into what can be. So if you're holding on to something today, a person, a plan, a version of yourself, ask gently, is this helping me expand? Or is it keeping me stuck? And if the answer brings a lump in your throat or a tear to your eye, listen, that's your soul speaking. You don't need to let go all at once. Just start loosening your grip. Just start softening around the edges. Just give yourself permission to not carry so much. That's how surrender begins, not with one grand release, but with thousands of quiet choices to trust life again, and again, and again. And now, as this journey together comes to a close, I want to say something simple. Thank you. Thank you for choosing to be here. Thank you for listening not just with your ears, but with your heart. Thank you for walking through these reflections, for breathing through the truth, for letting yourself feel what needed to be felt. You didn't have to, but you did, and that matters. The world needs more people like you, willing to look inward, to soften, to grow. If this message resonated, if something opened inside you, consider subscribing to the Chill Stoic. We'll meet you again, in silence, in stillness, in strength. Until then, keep surrendering. Keep letting go. Keep coming home to yourself. Because that's where all the freedom has been waiting.